Welcome to NYNJPA Weather, your weather source for the Northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm meteorologist Stephen DiMartino. Another cold and windy day is expected throughout the Northern Mid-Atlantic today as a strong upper-level low and low pressure center over northern Maine continues to spin off towards the northeast. That northwesterly flow from pretty much the surface up to 500 millibars continues to pull moisture off the Great Lakes and deposit it over the Northern Atlantic. Today, a few scattered snow showers can be expected and some flurries, but not as much as what we saw yesterday because the disturbances are not as strong. But still, there will be a threat for some scattered snow showers and flurries. Accumulations will be less than an inch, if any. Most locations will see a trace and just that's about it. But for the most part, the main story for today is going to be the cold conditions with temperatures in the 30s once again and wind chills in the teens and 20s. So clearly we are dealing with a rather frigid weather pattern. Winds are going to be from the northwest anywhere from 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusting over 30 miles per hour at times. So there could be some minor threats for some minor wind damage, some shingles lost. Also, just be careful when you're driving, especially a light car. Some of those winds could catch you by surprise. But for the most part, again, the main story will be the temperatures. So how long will these cold conditions last? Let's take a look at the surface map. Now clearly this morning we have our upper level low and our surface low pressure center to the north of Maine moving in towards the Canadian Maritimes. It's an impressive low pressure center. And notice the tight isobars. It's a line of pressure. Pressure gradient produces strong winds and that's why it's windy. However, as you move off towards the southwest, towards the Ohio and Tennessee River Valley, those pressure lines begin to slacken, and that means that winds also decrease. High pressure is currently over the northern plains, will shift to the east, and as a result, the winds will decrease mostly tomorrow and through Wednesday night into Thursday, where winds will be falling off more around 5 to 10 miles per hour. So it won't feel as cold as what we are experiencing today. Temperatures will also begin to moderate for Thursday and Friday ahead of a cold front that will move through the region on Friday night with additional snow showers and some cold conditions for Saturday once again. Then we move into an interesting setup for a potential storm. Let's take a look at the latest model guidance that I'm using. This is the UK Met model guidance from the Penn State EWOL website. Now I'm using the UK Met because it basically publicly is the closest model guidance to the European ensemble guidance, the Canadian model guidance, and some of the GFS ensemble guidance. Now, the European itself has one issue that's really sticking out to me, and that is that it's trying to phase the disturbance that's over the Mississippi Valley and the Tennessee River Valley with the polar vortex that is over the Hudson Bay. And that's producing an area low pressure that is very strong over the Great Lakes. However, all of the ensemble guidance for the European models and the UK Met and the Canadian, as I said, produce a little bit of a different setup. And the reason why is because it's keeping the two disturbances separate. So as a result, you still have your east-based negative NAO, and that's important because if this was a west-based negative NAO, then there would be a much greater potential for a winter storm for all of the northern mid-Atlantic. However, because of the pattern, the way it's setting up, notice, for example, the ridge over the west coast is a little bit too far to the west than what you would normally expect for a winter storm for the I-95 corridor. The ridge axis, what you like to have for a winter storm for New York City and Philadelphia, is that ridge axis in the west to be centered around Montana and Idaho. This is clearly not the case, but the ridge axis focuses more towards the west coast, which kind of shifts the entire pattern a little bit too far to the west over the United States, and also creates an east-based negative NAO because the polar vortex is diving into the Hudson Bay, northern Hudson Bay, and thus does not allow the ridge over Greenland to build into northern Canada. So basically we could see those type of impacts, but we still have an upper level low to the east of the Canadian Maritimes, and that's important because that's going to force convergence and confluence around northern Maine and the Canadian Maritimes, which in turn produces high pressure over Maine and just to the north of Maine. And why is that important? Let's take a look at the surface map. Now here's the surface map for for Saturday night, and notice our low pressure center is over the Tennessee River Valley. It's moving northeast, and if not for the strong upper low that's over the Canadian Maritimes, this low pressure would be driving right into the St. Lawrence River Valley. But there's a block. Notice there's a higher pressure area that's basically over southeast Canada and Maine. That concerns me because what we're going to have able to set up is some cold air damming for the interior locations. We're focusing on northeastern Pennsylvania, the Hudson Valley, central New York, for example. And that makes me a little bit nervous because we've seen this before in the model guidance where it underestimates the strength of the high pressure center over the St. Lawrence River Valley and over northern New England. And when that happens, you can at times get more of an icy scenario than what's currently suggested. Now, because of the setup, when we go look at 500 millibars by Sunday night, you can see the difference in the way that the 500 millibar pattern sets up as compared to the operational European model guidance. The disturbance over the East Coast remains separate from the polar vortex that is basically over the Hudson Bay. And that allows the strongest PVA to move towards the coast, which means that our low pressure center is closer towards the coast than, let's say, over Buffalo. And that's a major difference for those in northeastern Pennsylvania and the Hudson Valley. Watch out because this is not an all-rain event for those locations. We can also see that we have our close to a 50-50 low around the Canadian Maritimes, our east base negative NAO, and we have a storm that, again, likely will not produce much of any frozen precipitation for the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan area. This looks like mostly rain. However, if you move into the interior, watch out because there's more than meets the eye with this storm, and it's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And the reason why, let's take a look at the surface map. You can see the influence of just separating that disturbance just enough to keep the majority of the lifting more closer to the coastal plain than, let's say, over the St. Lawrence River Valley. You have an area low pressure that is redeveloping and rapidly deepening over New Jersey. Again, I want to repeat again that right now this does not look like in any way, shape, or form a frozen precipitation event for New York City and Philadelphia. But again, for the interior, this type of low track could mean more frozen precipitation than some might believe. So if you're in northeastern Pennsylvania, the Hudson River Valley, even northwestern New Jersey, parts of extreme northwestern Sussex County, I would keep an eye on this storm for Sunday night into Monday, because Sunday afternoon, should I say, into Monday, because this storm could be more of an issue than what some might make it out of. There's a lot of details we don't know. A lot can change with this storm. The development of the North Atlantic Oscillation is going to be extremely important, but it's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Thank you for choosing NYNJPA Weather as your weather source for the Northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm meteorologist Stephen DiMartino. And by the way, we're having a free 7-day trial if you want to try out the premium membership. I think it's an excellent time considering a storm's on the way. Have an excellent day.